Breathe on me, breath of God, till I am wholly thine. To all this earthly part of me glows with thy fire divine. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be holy and acceptable unto you, O God, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. The Binath Pernia had a history. He had in his mind flashbacks of that day, of that abusive day when his brothers put him in a well. When he was in that well and all there was darkness. He had flashbacks of that day when his brothers took him out of that well and sold him into slavery. He had flashbacks of that day when they took his coat, his most treasured possession, and tore it and smeared it with blood of a goat. And he knew what they were going to do with it. They were going to go home to his father and say, "Look, the blood of a lion. Our brother has been killed." And he wondered for years how many days his father mourned him. Zerapinus Pania had flashbacks of that terrible, horrible, abusive day, even 20 years afterwards. He was abused, he was tortured, he was sworn into slavery. And yes, he had risen up because of dreams and everything else. And now he was an assistant to Pharaoh in Egypt. But it didn't change the nightmares, the flashbacks, the dreams. He was in the commissary that day, for he had established the first banking system in Egypt. A famine had come through the land, and he was signing off wheat products in lieu of houses, a banking system per se. And there he saw the worst thing he could have seen, the nightmare in front of him. The 10 brothers who had done all that to him. The 10 brothers who had put him in that well. The 10 brothers who had sold him into slavery. The 10 brothers who had taken his coat. The 10 brothers who had abused him beyond belief. And it all came running back. But they didn't recognize him. No, he was totally Egyptian by then. He spoke Egyptian. He wore the silks of an Egyptian. He had the pointy shoes of an Egyptian. He had the pointy beard of the Egyptian. He had the amulets of the Egyptian and even the cobra of the Pharaoh on his turban. They didn't recognize him. And he thought, now here's my time. I can get some revenge here. But be smart. Be savvy. Don't go all at once. And so he was careful. And he went up to them and said, "What is it that you want?" Not in very nice terms, however. And they said, "We are from Canaan, and we have come because of the famine, and we desire wheat." Liars! Liars! You are spies! Spies you are! No, not us. Yes, you are spies. If you are not, go back, and one of you go back and get that youngest brother of yours and bring him here. And then he threw the rest of them in jail, in the darkest of darkest prison cells, for the 3 days it took for the journey. But that was just the beginning of the game. He pulled them and clawed them and started having a fun game of sorts with them. It was a game he enjoyed. You see, when all 11 brothers were there, he would let them go a little bit, but he would always plant something in their grain bags. And then they would open them up, and they would be caught of thievery, and he would send them back to jail. And on and on and on it went for months. And then he heard them say, "This is all because of what we did to Joseph. This is all because of how we treated him so badly. This is all because of what we did to our father. This is all because of how we hurt him. This is our payback." But they didn't know Joseph was standing in the room. There are Pinath, Perina, standing in the room. And he went to his own quarters, and he was outraged. And he wept. And he was furious that they still didn't see the sins of their deeds. And he took one of them and he hog-tied them and he beat them. Simeon it was. And then the game could have gone on forever. And he could have killed them and he could have gone on forever, but he did his one last game. He took a cup, his most prized possession, and put it in the youngest son's brain. And when they went off, and the cup was once again found, and they came back, he said, "I will keep the youngest son. You all go home. He will stay with me as mine." The oldest son said, "No, I can't let you do that. My father said if we don't bring the youngest son home, he will die of sorrow. It is the last son of he born to his woman who died in labor. It is the last son, and he will die of sorrow. No, take me. But let this son go home. Take me and do what you want with me, but let this son go home. Take me, but let the youngest go home." Joseph excused the Egyptian ministers in the room, and he broke down weeping. Weeping. It said that nowhere in the palace could you not hear the anguish of Joseph crying. He excused all the slaves and all the other Egyptians in the room. And he said to those brothers in Hebrew, "I am Joseph." They couldn't take it in. What's he talking about? Who is this guy? How does he know about Joseph? He said it again, composing himself a little more. I am Joseph, the one you sold into slavery. Can you imagine the homecoming? It was one filled with good old time religion and one filled with grace, where there was a lot of confessing and a lot of weeping and a lot of forgiving. I am Joseph. And they came together. And they saw each other for the first time. And they saw themselves in new ways. And Joseph, I can imagine, saw himself in a new theological way as well. For I can imagine he saw himself as a way of having purpose. Yes, he had been sold into slavery, and he had gone through those dreams, and he had risen up and up and up. But now he saw what God had done for him. And I could imagine him saying to his brothers, don't feel bad about what you did. For God had a purpose for me to save you. Can you imagine the scene? That forgiveness? That homecoming? Now, take the story and put it with the words that Jesus says in our gospel this morning. Love your neighbor. Do good to those who curse you. Pray for those who hate you. Be compassionate as your Father is compassionate. Oh, it's so hard in this world. It's so hard in this world right now to love, to be compassionate, to forgive. It's so hard. We're called to be radical lovers, radical forgivers. And the one leads, and if you don't, the one path leads to revenge. But the other path leads so much more to hope. So for that person who's on your back, forgive them. For that person who's wounded you so deeply, pray for them. For that person who is just right now down to getting on your last nerve, love them. Because that is what we are called to do. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our hymn is hymn number 2169, God, How Can We Forgive?